Good morning. On behalf of VMware and CIO&Leader, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this roundtable meeting. Joining us today are Mr. Alingan Patra, Mr. Kunal Dhingra, Mr. T.R. Venkateswaran, and Mr. Rajkumar Ayala. So welcome everyone to this session. And thank you for participating on this discussion on virtual cloud networks for intrinsic security. And the reason we are discussing this topic is that we are in an era where the usage of cloud solutions is quite pervasive now, and connectivity is quite ubiquitous, and data as a consequence is everywhere. And since the use of cloud solutions has increased manifold, much of it being driven by the need for organizations to be more agile, flexible, and cost-effective, now employees can connect from anywhere, anytime with any device. And openness and flexibility has become the new mantra. The challenge is that this brings more risks for the organization. So over the past months, we have seen a number of data breaches and ransomware attacks. And according to the IBM cost of data breach annual study, the average cost of a serious security incident is now 16.5 crores. And this is a very large sum. So the consequence of this is that all IT leaders are under greater pressure than before to ensure that enterprise data as well as IP is adequately secured under all circumstances. And the task has been now made more daunting by the fact that IT now spans multiple clouds, it has multiple applications, and the systems are across the IT landscape, and new software development paradigms like APIs, containers, Kubernetes are being adopted in a much bigger way now. So given the high velocity of change in the IT environment, how can technology leaders ensure that organizations remain compliant and secure without hampering agility and scalability? So are there new kinds of security options or paradigms that should be considered in the quest for risk reduction? So to set the context for today's discussion, I would first like to invite Elton Chu. He's a Senior Director, Networking, Security, and Automation Solutions for APJ region with VMware. And Elton is an experienced technical services leader. He has been with VMware for the last 2 years. And he's previously worked with Serve1, Riverbed, and Citrix in senior technical and consulting roles. So over to you, Elton, to set the context for today's discussion.
Thanks, Giri, and thank you everybody for having me. So I think while we actually have this topic today to deep dive into, maybe I'll just set the context. But first, talk a little bit about how VMware actually looked into this space of virtual cloud networking, and then from there we will actually double click and deep dive into what it means in security space, right? So just allow me to actually share a couple of things over here, just to assist me in this. So you guys can see my screen over here, I assume.
Yes, we can see your screen. Thank you.
All right. So I think that the virtual cloud networking over here is made out of a couple of things. As far as VMware, we call it the VCN portfolio is concerned, right? First, it actually comprised of what we know very, very well, which is a software-defined wide area network, right? So this is actually one of the hottest thing, if I may say, use that term. We all know, we, instead of the traditional MPLS or whatever, we're actually moving into everything software-defined. How do we actually leverage on different kind of networking technologies to actually connect the wide area together? Moving on, we also view the software-defined networking in the data centers as key to the virtual cloud networking portfolio, right? So this is actually, instead of really buying boxes and very static routing, very manual provisioning, we're talking about automation, we're talking about agility, we're talking about very scale and on-demand and self-driving automation. That's actually in the space of software-defined networking. And then moving on, we're talking about, instead of using the very traditional boxes of looking in load balancer, or in some spaces we call it the application delivery controller, we would like to actually shift it into a more software-defined way. And in this software-defined, we don't really mean a VM wrapper wrapping the traditional, hardware load balancer. We are really looking at a new architecture of, management plane, control plane, and actually data plane kind of architecture, software-defined and very, very scalable. And then, instead of really buying boxes, put it there and use 30% of its capacity for 90% of the time, we'd really just pay whatever we actually use, at day zero and day one, and then we actually continue to scale. So you pay what you actually use. That's a software-defined way of looking at application delivery controller. All right. Moving on, container connectivities and security. Right. We all know that VM workload is actually still very, very much taking up the real estate of the data centers, and people are moving into the cloud and whatnot. But containers actually coming on, right? So looking at how we actually connect the containers, the new way of actually developing application, and how to actually secure them. This is actually a very key component with the virtual cloud networking as well. And then last but not, how do we actually make sure that your security and networking profile in the data centers is actually easily portable as you actually start looking into the public clouds, the like of the AWS, the Azure, and the GCP, right? And there are many others as well. How do you actually have a uniform and a federated approach of looking into your security and also your networking approach, right? Instead of using the very if then else. And then finally, how we actually look at all this whole thing and how do we actually make sure that security, and VMware like to actually call it the intrinsic security, right? Which is built in instead of bolted on. How do we actually look at security holistically, right? Making sure that you're actually having a very easily operated security architecture and solution. So with that, right, I think this formed the whole entire virtual cloud networking portfolio of VMware. And with that, I would like to actually just spend a little bit more time to actually touch on the security, how we actually look at security, the networking security part of a virtual cloud networking portfolio. So am I in the presentation mode?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, let me swap it. And how is it
now
now?
It's okay.
Okay, sure. So we like to look at this, right? I mean, no matter how protected your perimeter security is, right? Somehow or somewhere or someone will actually find a way to get into your environment, right? Let's face it. We as security practitioner or technology practitioner, we just need to actually accept this. No matter how well protected your perimeter is, somewhere, somehow they'll find a way to get in. And when they get in, right, they will not really just compromise the first server or the first workload that they actually get into. They will actually get onto a few hops like 48 over here and try to actually roam around, try to actually figure, try to sniff, try to scout and find the most precious data you have inside there. And put it into a real life example, right? This is actually as if like someone actually getting into your house, instead of really just stealing, your 10 years of tax return and actually leave the house, they roam in your house, right? They roam in your house, they listen to you, to your daily family conversation, they go to your drawers, they open it up, they roam your rooms and try to actually figure the most precious thing. And at one go, they actually took everything and they actually just go away. So we view East-West, and VMware actually see from a network security standpoint, we view East-West as the new battleground. It is no longer just protecting a parameter, because that has actually been traditionally that battleground of preventing people from coming in. But East-West within is actually the new battleground. And to put things into perspective over here, right? Excuse me. Oops. Why VMware actually see? Give me a second. Yeah. So when we say that this is actually a new battleground, it doesn't mean that people are not aware of it all this while, but it is really very difficult to do it, right? And the reason why it's very difficult to do it, right, is that, with all this happening, setting up policies and all this kind of thing, it makes things very, very operationally challenging. But if we think about how we distribute it and run it in a software manner, it is as if like we actually break the hard boxes into multiple components and put it in every single workload, right? And that makes things much, much easier. And that makes things economically much more advantageous. Okay, so this is actually a visual representation of what we're talking about, which is really breaking things up and make it into a software-defined manner. Okay, your firewall, your web application firewall, your IDS, IPS, your analytics and everything, breaking it all up. And with that, right, think about scalability. Right, we have actually run a few tests with a few of our, a good sample size of the customers, and we view that, we can actually achieve 20 terabits of firewalling, and that's huge. It's huge, right? And with that, right, in terms of thinking about, well, some customers may actually have a different mileage depending on the scale they actually deploy things. But on average, we are looking at lots of cost saving as well, right? Versus a traditional firewalling approach and the distributed firewalling approach. So just a very quick summary before I actually pass it back to Girish. So we view the east-west approach, the three very simple and a very straightforward step. The first step is really talking about segmentation. And segmentation over here, we're really looking at, you have to do the basic, right? The basic of segmenting development, SIT environment with the production environment, right? That's the basic. And then maybe you can actually dig it deeper, right? When you wanted to actually segment down to application and stuff like that. So an analogy of this, right, is that you lock up the rooms. That's actually a network segmentation, right? Rooms and room. But when you lock up the cabinets inside the room, the drawers and everything, that's probably what we consider as micro-segmentation. Okay, so the first step is really about segmentation, and everybody, in our view, should actually practice segmentation. The second step is really about, after you have actually secured the rooms, the cabinets or whatever, but sometimes people will still be able to actually get in, right? Like, for example, use the ransomware as an example. It's using SMB, right? So that's actually a legit port or whatever. But the second step is really looking into that. Traditionally, it's pretty difficult to implement IDS, IPS because you need to actually do port spanning. You need to actually pump, mirror some data and put it into a data lake in order to actually do all this kind of thing. But the moment we actually put this as the previous picture, actually, you can see we're putting this in underlying layer of every workload. And that makes things easy. Okay, so that makes things easy, and we can actually look into the flow of the network packet flow, and we can look at that and look at what are the malicious stuff that we can actually start blocking, or we actually push it into a sandbox. That's IDS, IPS, right? Hop to hop. And then the last one is really the NDR, the MTA and the NDR. Right? This is really about in a very traditional way of the 3-tier architecture, right? The user talk to the web talk to the app talk to the database, right? But this is actually in the context of, hey, if the web actually starts talking to the database directly, right, in that manner, you can actually think of other things, like if an NTP server or whatever start talking to a database, right, hey, something is wrong, and we want to actually block that, right? So this is actually all about NTA and NDR, network detection and response. So if we actually have got all these three components inside there, and with no network changes, right, I think that a lot of the IT practitioner and security practitioner likes to actually hear this when we say that implement this, and guess what? What's actually the cream on top of the cake? You don't have to make any network changes because they are all in a software manner. They are all being implemented in the underlying workload. A lot of them actually likes it. A lot of them things start resonating. Okay, so think of how software defined approach actually works, right? Those things actually got attached to your VM, right? Whether this is actually a security posture or network profile, whatever, it got attached to your VM. So you got a new workload, you inherit the policies in the web tier, same thing, because it's actually at the policy level, it inherits straight away, right? And then if you actually move the workloads from host to different hosts or whatever, there will be no drop connection, right? The policies and everything actually continue to maintain, right? And then if you actually retire the workload, you actually retire the policies and the posture as well. You don't really have to actually go into a firewall and actually start scrubbing and start housekeeping your 500,000 different rules or whatnots that you actually have in traditionally or built over time. Right? So that's actually very powerful because it's all set in the management plane and down to control plane to the data plane. The last thing I would like to actually say is that we actually promise the portability of all your security posture, be it in your data centers or whether you're actually moving your workload into a cloud. So that makes your operation really easy, and that makes things really clean and simple. We all know, the worst enemy of security practitioner is really complexity, and we like things to actually be very simple. So with that, right, this is actually a very quick. I know I did that probably in about 8-10 minutes, but this is really just a surface of virtual cloud networking and how we actually see security from a virtual cloud networking perspective. With that, I'll pass it back to Giri, and I definitely look forward to a great roundtable and lots of discussion. Back to you, Giri.
Thank you, Elton. I think that was very useful for you to set the context on particularly East-West protection, where you talked about, principles like segmentation and micro-segmentation, packet inspection, probably deep packet inspection, and also talking about NTA, NDR. I think these are some useful principles that people may have already be implementing or are thinking about. So in our discussion, we can certainly cover these things. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Manoj Bharadwaj, who has just joined us. So welcome, Manoj. If we could have you on video, that would be good. We also have Mr. Venkateswaran from PNB. So if we could also have him on video, it would be nice. So let me start with, talking a little bit about some of the challenges which are faced by organizations. So in the context of cyber security, what are the main challenges that you are facing today? So if we could have Kunal maybe start off with that.
So thank you for inviting me for this discussion today. And the presentation was excellent. It was to the point, very basic, and even somebody like me who is not a security practitioner, I would say, a hardcore security practitioner, and sometime I go and against my CISO to say my user experience is far more important. Don't put 100 locks outside the door, but that was extremely useful for me also. So when you're talking about a cyber security challenge, I would say it is twofold. People start putting in too much of stuff without realizing what is the actual output they're going to achieve. There is no ultimate goal. It's just that we are putting in plugs wherever there is a water leakage. And this is a very common thing I have seen in the industry. People would start putting in plugs instead of putting a dam. And second thing, which I feel is extremely important, we start protecting everything. Let's put perimeter security. Let's put some security on network. Let's put security on end device. And again, the why gets missed, which is your data. People do not talk about data security as commonly, which they talk about the network security or endpoint security or your security of infrastructure as a whole, but they will not talk about data. You start from very basic, which is your data, which is your center of the whole cycle. If you can make every policy, every procedure, every tool that you implement, which would secure that data could be hosted on the user's machine, or that data could be on a VM, or that data could be on a physical server, or that data could be in transit between your cloud workloads to your on-prem workloads, or that data could be sitting in your public cloud, or that could be a customer-facing application. Wherever that data is, just focus on the data. And if you can bridge the gaps between multiple layers of where data is secured, your security is done. Cybersecurity is nothing more than data security for me. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. I think Kunal, that's an interesting perspective that focus on the data rather than focus on the other elements of the network and the compute, because the focus is essentially to preserve the data.
We are not in a field of saving human beings, or we are not in army, or we are not in police, or we are not some security guard sitting outside your building to protect human beings. All IT professionals, whether the security professional or infra professional or app, anybody who is working in IT, we just work on data. So just focus on the data and you're done.
Yeah, thanks, Kunal. I'd like to ask Rajkumar. Rajkumar, what's your perspective and what are the top challenges which are faced in the area of cybersecurity from your view?
I think firstly, I would like to thank you, Girish, for inviting me into this session. And very good perspective both Elton and Kunal has given about what are the challenges which we are facing today and where we should actually focus as such. So I think interesting thing which I've seen in my career, wherein things have been evolving. And one thing which we all need to understand that these days, certain things like the users have the flexibility, wherein we said we adopt cloud, we adopt a lot of new technologies and new ways of allowing users to access applications and so multi-cloud, all these things have become as a flexibility. But over and above to this, the security has also become very, 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 very sophisticated these days. And I would tell you, I mean, we were talking about, I think Ulsan was talking about the ransomware attacks. The reason this has become one of the prime most important thing these days, because the attacks are so sophisticated that they talk about, they are masters in almost all, they can breach any new dimension. I would say rather new generation firewalls, they know how they work. They know how they can breach that. They also know how, they can actually put down an antivirus server. They can put down an EPO server. They can actually put down anything, and they can, if the person wants to target something, they can easily bleach everything. And this is what is a fact of life today. So when we look at protecting the perimeter, I think Ilton was talking about protecting the perimeter, protecting northwest traffic, east-west traffic, and these are all the terminologies which was not something which a CIO need to really worry about, but we need to go deep into it today, just because the sophistication has improved multi-folds and we have to get into all these things as such. So I think to add on to that, I mean, see, we have given users to work from home today and we cannot stop that. And if it was within our perimeter, we could have actually sustained a lot of things and we could have basically protect our core and we could have sustained easily. But the situation today is different. Every user uses, we talk about BOID devices, people accessing from home networks, people need flexibility in accessing applications. So the reason why I'm emphasizing all these things is that today, any kind of an attack can happen through an email phishing, or it can be through application vulnerabilities. It could be through USB or data copying, or it could be anything that matters. So these are something, irrespective of whatever we do, when user comes into picture, user may not be thinking the way we can think about it. And that's where the breaches can easily happen into the networks. So I mean, if a person, I mean, if that guy can infringe, I mean, he can get the user credentials of one individual, he can escalate his privileges and he can actually hack everything, whether you call it as DR, DC, you talk about multi-clouds, everything is easily can get in and he can actually encrypt everything. And that is what is the sophistication which we are talking about. So, I mean, the reason why I'm talking and emphasizing all these things is because it is just not about technologies. It is just not about, I would say, processes. It is just not about people. As long as we don't really bridge the gap between people, process, and technologies, irrespective of whatever we adopt, whatever we do, there will always be gaps, and easily people can get, can be easily affected, and they can bring down the businesses like anything. So, I mean, one of the perfect examples which I think Ilton was talking about is we talk about, building our network in such a fashion that at least one of the, before getting into it, I would say fundamental questions which boardroom ask us, saying that by putting all these technologies, are you saying that we will be 100% protected? The answer is absolutely no, either from any of the companies, because today the sophistications are so much. The only best way to do is how much difficult we make the life of the hacker to get into our network is something which we need to target, which we need to focus on. And that's where all these three things like people, process, and technology comes into picture. So we should educate people. We should ensure that they get to know what are the do's and don'ts. We need to continuously focus on educating them, giving them the, we need to internally conduct some kind of attacks to ensure that what are the things which they need to be. They should become ears and eyes for us to give us any kind of intimation if something has happened. Similarly, we need to focus on processes, because I would say if you have deployed 100 types of technologies, how do you correlate all of them? And finally, how do you get the meaningful output of that? As Elton was talking about, today he can get into the network, he can get into the applications, he can get into the servers, he can snoop around everything, and he will find out what is lying today. If that thing needs to come to us, we need to know how do we correlate. We talk about something like SOC having overall above us who can give us some insight. But when you actually want to catch him and catch him at the right time, we need to have a correlation of everything. So that is where process and technologies has to be in sync with each other. So what I would say in a nutshell is that irrespective of the technologies, we should have the combination of people, process, and technology. And we should do as much as possible in this area so that we can minimize, I would not say 100% protected, but we can minimize to the extent possible. Thanks, Girish. Sorry, Girish, you are on mute.
Yeah, I was just trying to keep out the background noise. Thank you. I think, Rajkumar, you made some very interesting points, which is about, if I understood you correctly, having multi-layer security, if only to increase the cost for the attacker to get into your system. Is that correct? And the fact that attackers have become far more sophisticated and they can navigate lots of defenses. So we need better techniques to keep them out, and that's going to be a combination of technology, people, and processes. And it's not going to be, you can't rely upon only technology to do it. If my understanding of what you said is correct.
You are right, Giri, because it is just not technologies only. Yes, we definitely need technologies, but we need a combined efforts of people, process, and technology. These are the three areas we should focus on, and we should be able to amalgamate all these things.
Yeah, thank you. So I'd like to ask Mr. T.R. Venkateswaran also to come in, and as the CISO of a large public sector bank, Mr. Venkateswaran, maybe you can also tell us what are some of the challenges that are being faced by organizations when it comes to cybersecurity.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, sir.
Yeah. Good morning. See, the main challenge which we are facing in the industry is the skill set. Okay. The technologies are fast changing, and the skill sets are very scarce. When the technology changes, organizations are having legacy applications, legacy workloads, and there's some things are there in the data center. For new applications, they are looking at cloud. So implementing security across the board has been the challenge. Then with the advent of the COVID and the work from home situations, there has been change in the need for security. Okay. Till now, we were looking at the endpoints, the wide area network, and we were looking at these aspects. And we were not focusing on generally the secure organizations or the financial organizations where security was a primary concern. They were focusing on mostly on-prem implementations. Okay, and the security also there will be having some officers across the country, and all the security were being positioned there. There was endpoint security, there was the security over the network, there was security for the data centers, all these things were there. So with the advent of work from home, there is a need to relook the entire security architecture. Okay. So this has been challenging because we don't know who are the people who are going to access our applications. Okay. So the building in processes for this has also been a challenge. So with the there are various things which are happening across the industry. The organizations are moving towards cloud. The applications are moving towards cloud. And people think that the cloud implementations are agile or this thing. But for organizations which are there, traditionally they have on-prem implementations, managing both on-prem implementation and bringing in the security at the cloud and the security at the various perimeter levels. It's not only, till now it was only we had to protect the data center and we had to protect the network. Now the things have changed. So these are the challenges which the industry has to collectively work towards it. But skill set is one of the major challenges which I have been noticing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Venkateshwaran. I think the primary point you are making is that, while we can have the technologies, I think finding the people to operate and deploy those technologies is becoming a bigger challenge. So good point that been made. I'd like to ask Mr. Manoj Bharadwaj, to give his observations about what are the challenges in terms of security that you feel are becoming important. Mr. Bharadwaj, you are on mute. Okay, I think he is having some challenge in connectivity. We will come back to him. So let me switch gears a bit and talk a little bit about another topic, going beyond challenges. So I think, as all of you have said, because the nature of the threats is changing, and the speed at which the attackers are coming in, the volume and the velocity of the attacks is also changing. So what should be the strategy now to secure the network? I think, Kunal, you had mentioned, it's important to protect the data, but not really worry about the components of the network and the compute. But so therefore, what should be the strategy to secure the workloads? Because that's really where the data is residing.
I think I've been taking it wrong in a sense when I said don't worry about the set of components. What I meant was make all your policies focused around data. Now, the data may be something which is on rest, or data may be something on transit, data may be on-prem and data may be on cloud, or data may be with users directly on them and machine. So whatever procedures and policies, whatever tool you would implement, it cannot be just focused on, oh, I'll go and secure my network. Oh, I'll go and secure my endpoint. If my endpoint is secured, everything is secured. It is not the case. That was what I meant. I never meant just focus on data. You need to prepare all policies, procedures, all your methods that you would do, or even all the tools that you would implement has to be focused around what data you would go and ultimately protect. That was what I meant. And when you're saying, how should we do it? Make a long-term approach. Make an approach which would at least stay in for 3 years. I know technology is changing very fast. I know attackers and our security threats are constantly increasing. But somehow the basis of how you would secure, or the basis on which the attacks would happen, are continuously happening. The method is almost the same since ages, since all of us started our careers. It would have increased, it have become more sophisticated, but the base is same. So make a policy or make something which is down the line at least for 3 years. Go and convince your board for at least a 3 years investment. Do not say, I will go and do something for 1 year. And if you're making a roadmap for 3 years, please make a roadmap thinking all different layers of your IT, which is your endpoint, which is your own data center, which is your network, which is your cloud, and how would you connect all of those? Making sure all of those are connected, talking to each other. Please do not go and implement multiple tools which are independent in nature. And then you need to bring in one more layer of SOC as a response. If you can bring in tools which can talk to each other, not only tell you what has gone wrong, but auto remediate. So SOC is important for you. You cannot go and eliminate the need of SOC because you need to see what is going wrong. But SOC is more or less reactive majority of time. So you need to take an action then and there when it happens. You cannot say a SOC would alert a network engineer, or SOC would go and alert a cloud admin, or SOC would go and alert a CISO if something has happened. The point it has happened, the same moment it has to be remediated. So all your tools which are getting implemented, make sure they can talk to each other. If they cannot talk to each other, they can talk to a central tool, which could be a SOC. But SOC cannot be a magic pill for you. Your magic pill has to be then SOAR. If your tools cannot interact and take an action by themselves, please, faster you would implement a SOAR on top of SOC, faster you would be able to remediate things. Faster you would be able to remediate things, you may be able to focus on what next. And it's a journey. It's not one day job that you would do, finish it, okay, I'm done and dusted for 3 years. It is a journey that you would walk day by day. And there is a Hindi song which I keep on laughing with my team, which is "Jeet jayenge hum, tu agar sang hai." It means we will win if you are with me. Yeah. And this is both ways. If you cannot take along your team members, your leadership, your board, as well as your users on this journey, if you miss any of these, then you would fail. And by any chance, a hacker takes along a user with him by phishing. It's a song which is both ways. A hacker would say, "Jeet jayenge hum, tu agar sang hai." So any user or any IT professional who had made a small mistake, you're gone. But as a CISO, as a CIO, if you have your users, your board, your associates, your engineers with you, that we will not make mistakes. Keep on training people to a limit that they get bored of that training. It has to go into a DNA that security is not IT's problem. Security is everybody's problem.
Yeah, thanks, Kunal, for making the point that the weakest link in the chain will lead to the problem, and the fact that training is often at the root of tackling a lot of the cybersecurity issues more than the technology. And you also made a point about a SOC alone may not be sufficient, but you may need to have SOAR implementation as well to holistically tackle the problem and to remediate and to do it quickly enough. Thank you so much for bringing up some of these points. I'd also like to welcome Puran Jaiswal, who has joined us in this conversation. So welcome, Puran, as well as Manoj Bharajwaj. Manoj, are you able to connect now?
Yes, Giridhar, I'm able to. Hi,
yeah, go ahead.
Good morning,
we'd
everyone.
like to hear from you. Yes.
Thanks for invite. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Right. That's it. So let's move ahead. I just joined. So the context.
So the thing, I think we've discussed 2 points. One was, what do you think are the top challenges facing organizations when it comes to cybersecurity? And the second one was, what should be the strategy to secure the network, given that the challenges which are there. So we would like to hear your view on, what should be the strategy to secure the network. So, and particularly in a cloud world, if you're using clouds as well.
So, what I heard what Kunal was saying, it's pretty simple. There's no rocket science. You have to stick to basics. You have to have a right tool, and obviously not n number of tools. The moment we talk about n number of tools, the cost increases, the maintenance cost increases, and the the top management get confused. Okay, they start questioning why are you looking for so many tools? Though they are not experts of the security, but they will question you. That will demotivate yourself, and also when you have n number of tools, you will not be able to get the data what they are expecting, and then it will increase the data variance also. So when the data does not matches with the different tools, all your security will go on toss. So when I was talking to one of the vendor to implement a cloud security, he was telling me like, we can have one-stop solution for all your security solutions, right? From your two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication, your logs, the event monitoring, your alerts, and plus geofencing, whatnot you can have, Plus at the same time, he was saying like, we will arrange a training session to your organization, a different training session for different set of people. You would require a training for your tech team, your soft team, your NOC team, your business team, your marketing team. There are team members who access data on the go, and they like sales and marketing. They want to have access to all the data because they are talking to clients. That is a biggest security hole which no one talks till date. We are trying like we will not give access, but at the end of the day, they go back to MDs or CEOs and they say, how do I talk to a client if I don't have the mobile number, if I don't have the email ID? So in a way, they just download the data, and that's the first security data breach happens. So we have to start in there. I haven't found any solution which is trying to fix that loophole. So I'm still searching for that. That's my view as of now.
Thank you, Puran. So, Rajkumar, I want to switch a little bit to one more topic, which is that there have been a number of new concepts around security which have been discussed, like zero trust architecture, as well as zero trust network architecture, ZTNA, and SASE, which is Secure Access Service Edge. So, what is your view about these new paradigms that are being talked about and discussed?
Okay, I think I've been telling that zero trust is a concept which is there from ages, but it has come as a important thing and important concept in the recent past because of whatever is happening in the environment as such. One is because of the pandemic and whatever is happening. You can see the number of attacks have increased multi-fold, and people, particularly I'm talking about national, international level, wherein the organizations have been built and have been funded heavily, basically to target the companies as such. Okay, this is one of that's where the ransomware and all these guys, all these groups have formed basically to do all these things. And yes, we cannot say that, yes, we will sit tight and see things happening. So we need to see how much we can secure ourselves is something which I've been emphasizing earlier also. So when I say zero trust, yes, this is a concept with which we have to think through, and we do not see any of the areas which is unplugged. Okay, we need to look at, as I told you, there are only 3 areas. One is how do we empower people by training them, make them as ears and eyes, so that they can always give us information about what is happening across within the network, within their laptops or within their processes or whatever it is. And the third is the technology. The technology is something which we need to bank on so that it is not manually possible these days. Because any kind of attacks which we are talking about, if we say that we will implement IOCs and expect things to happen, no, it doesn't happen. So what we need to do is, let's not trust anybody. Let's see whatever areas which can be plugged in, and we should look at whatever best can be done from our side so that we build all the processes, people and technology. So these 3 things which we should always be concentrating on. The reason why this has become as a prime most important thing for us right now is, yes, today we are definitely agree that all of them would be working from home and they need to be working from open networks. So they're not working within the office. So they are bound to go into different sites. They are bound to go, they start using our applications through unsecured ways. So what we need to see is everywhere we should see what layers can be built in. So that is where the SASE comes into picture, whether we need to really deploy web proxy, whether we need to open up a secure tunnel before they access applications, whether we can, push our policies to the endpoint so that they don't get into vulnerable sites. We can always have URL filtering. We can do everything so that from the office the same kind of a security can reach the homes, and that is the only idea where SASE has come into picture, and that is where we are talking about SD-WAN kind of a concepts, and all these things have come as a prime most important thing. And other thing is the user usability and the users requirements have completely changed. Earlier, it used to be more from an intranet perspective, where people only used to use applications within the organizations. Today, most of them, internet usage has increased multifold, because all applications, they expect us to use it through internet. They want a lot of flexibility to access various sites and various applications which are on the public networks. So we cannot stop, and we cannot actually say that, no, we will use a legacy way of controlling all the users, and we will only post everything in internet and then intranet, and we expect people to use it. So this is all not going to work. So we have to look at both. One is giving people the flexibility and also have control. And that is where you say that when you implement a concept like zero trust in all the areas, you will be able to look at the gaps and the areas where people, our organization can become vulnerable. So we need to focus. One is to give flexibility and also have control and also have zero trust, so that all these technologies, whether we go with SOC deployment, whether you go with SASE deployments, whether you go with blocking USPs, you deploy applications like EDR, deploying, talking about utilizing artificial intelligence kind of a concepts, and all these things comes into picture only from the point of view that we are not in the same world as a decade ago, or at least 5 years back. So that's what we need to understand as a reality, and we should focus on technologies as well as, and also on people and processes. This is what is my submission, Giri.
Thank you, Rajkumar. I think that was a very comprehensive, summation you did upon, what is the value of some of the of a concept like zero trust. I think it was very valuable. I'd like to ask Vinay Bhatt. I'll just introduce him. He's the Director for Networking and Security for VMware India. And since we are coming towards the end of the session, I'll just ask him to summarize what has been discussed till now, and to to conclude the session with his remarks. So over to you, Vinay.
Thanks, Giri. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, you're audible. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks so much, Giri, for inviting us and having such a wonderful forum. I really appreciate. I think Kunal, you have a point. Sorry, you just raised the hand.
I just have a very, very, very small point. Maybe I'll just take 20 seconds.
Yeah, go ahead, Kunal, please.
As security practitioners and leaders, the biggest mistake I would like to point out, which all of us are doing. We are looking for talent in the market, but we are not ready to train our own people. The amount of money, amount of losses that we would make in case we need to bring somebody from outside is far more than if you go and invest in the talent who's working with you day to day. So please look at people who are with you, who have sweated with you. You could be far more secure than finding talent outside.
Thank you. Good point, Kunal. Thank you for making that point about developing your own people.
Yeah. No, so I think, Giri, clearly, very well articulated points. It's been a privilege to listen to, all the leaders and all the practitioners talk about their experience on challenges in cybersecurity, how to improve security in network, and then obviously ZTN and SASE. I think clearly there's a lot of things to learn for a company like us. VMware, like Elton said, right, we are not new to security, but we are continuously evolving. We are listening to our customers, and we're trying to see how we can make life simpler, because I think multiple times we heard that security solutions are siloed. They run independent, like Kunal mentioned, right? They have to be integrated. If there's a context, if there is one security solution that picks up that there is a malware somewhere in the data center, that context needs to be shared to everybody, so that then the real zero trust network implementation can happen. So the integration between your solutions is very, very important. And to Rajkumar's point, right, I think people, process, and technology alone cannot make that magic for you. You definitely need to have people in process. And, Kunal, I completely agree with you. I think the homegrown talent is, a long range solution for most of the things. The moment you get talent from the market, they only leave so quickly. And the other challenge obviously lies with most of us is the moment you train them and you give them a good certification, right? There are others who are waiting to poach them. So there's always, that balance of how do you strike that balance and how do you keep the talent with you. But again, Giri, great points. There's a lot to learn for us also as a company. And again, like I said, VMware is not new to security, but we are evolving. We are competing with the heavyweights who are there today from a security perspective, from a firewall perspective, from NT-NDR perspective, and so on and so forth. But again, our job or our objective has been, how do we really make it integrated? Because that is one area which is still open for a lot of players. And our forte is how do we get everything integrated with multi-cloud security, with container security, legacy workloads, which is virtual machine security, physical server security. How do we get all of that integrated, get all of that context, and really help to implement ZTN? And that's what our objective is. And we are moving very, very fastly towards that. But again, great points, Giridhar. And thanks so much for inviting us.
Thank you. Thank you, Vinay, for that very, succinct summary of what has been discussed. I think it was very valuable. I think we also had on this conversation, listening very carefully but quietly, Kokil Veera from VMware. Thank you, Kokil. If any concluding words that you want to give.
Thanks, Giri, and thanks to everyone again. Great points. I think I've actually noted down a lot of them. Around building people skill sets, around having solutions that can work together and give you a single pane of glass visibility or operational ability, right? And all of those points. So I think, I've got a couple of minutes. I'm actually jumping on to another session as a speaker.
Yes, I know that.
So I'll just, maybe just summarize. I think the points that were discussed very clearly today and which is exactly what VMware today is doing with a lot of customers, is helping them build data center security solutions that are not complex, right? That are very, very simple, that are operational. I think it involves all people, process, technology as mentioned, right? And the other important thing that possibly was there was, we can do security when we have full visibility. So I think we are also helping customers to gain full visibility into the environments, whether it is data center, whether it is cloud, whether it is endpoints, as we mentioned, right? So the complete stack comes in, and I think we've got a team today working with each one of you, helping you build these solutions. And if I would urge, right, if any one of you wants to have deep dive sessions on how we are actually helping other customers, and there are many who've already adopted VMware solutions today and have built these data centers, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to to progress this. But again, great conversations. Thank you, and Giri, thanks for your time. I know it's a Saturday morning, but once again, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know you have to jump into another session. I would invite all of you to join Kokil in that session, to hear more about these technologies. My thanks also to Alton and Vinay and to all the panelists who were there. So thank you, Kunal. Thank you, Rajkumar, for being here and for, talking about some of these challenges. Thank you, Manoj, also, who was here, and Mr. Venkateswaran. Thank you so much. It was a lovely conversation we had, and I encourage all of you to continue these conversations with the people, all the folks with VMware. They are very happy to hear your suggestions and, to describe some of the technologies and the new approaches that they are using for towards improving security. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.